You survived the most famous serial killer since Jack the Ripper. The 5-year anniversary is coming up. I think a lot of people would really like to hear from you after all this time. Want to know what it's like to be in the presence of that kind of evil. What goes through your brain when he's close enough to you and feel his breath.
Well, now she's fighting for Gabby. She's got to figure out how to get Gabby back. And it looks like Gabby's gone to some pretty pretty dark place. So that's yeah, that's exciting. You always have to raise the stakes for your hero. And literally, if you can, bring them into the depths of hell. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that we will actually put Sienna into a hellish dimension at some point. Few reasons. I never wrote what happened to him, but I knew it would be the worst thing imaginable, and I didn't want to see that happen to the character on one level. And just it's just not something. It felt like it would be disrespectful. We spent so much time, and hopefully you care for that character, and I care too much for Sienna too to just experience that, even though she wouldn't be experiencing it, but we would just to know what happened to someone that she cared so much about in such a horrible way would just be so off-putting. Um, if you seeing the movie, you know that really there's the most important thing is there's a misdirect that's being
Yeah, the
played.
fake outs. Yeah.
You're not supposed to know it's him. You're supposed to think it's another character. So that was another reason why I had it happen off screen. And then another reason is because it would have had to take place right after, immediately following the biggest kill scene in the movie, where the audience would have been absolutely desensitized to whatever we did to that character. They would have just, it would have been too overwhelming. And it just back to back massive kill scenes like that, I think they would have just become numb if they weren't numb already at this point in the movie.
Right.
So those were the main reasons. But it's interesting because it is probably the biggest criticism that I've seen so far that the movie's getting. So a lot of people wanted to see that character meet his demise. We got to make sure those rats had came with agents. They came with bodyguards. They were fine.
I saw him today.
Who? How can you be sure it was really him?
I could feel it.
Who is this Santa? He's scaring my kid.
Yeah, he's scaring me too.
Hey, Santa's handing out presents!
Yeah, I mean he was born to play this character. I really believe that. It's hard to imagine anybody else, but he wasn't originally the character. I'd made short films and two short films with Art the Clown, and then he was put into an anthology called All Hallows Eve, and he was played by my buddy Mike Gianelli, who's not an actor. And I wanted him to continue playing Art the Clown in Terrifier, but he just didn't want to do it anymore because it's just not what he does, and he didn't like spending all those hours in the makeup chair. Rightfully so. It's just you really have to be built for this sort of thing. So then when I knew we had to recast the role, I was looking for somebody now that I was starting from scratch who was taller and much thinner because I knew I had sculpted Art the Clown to be very gaunt, right? He had like that bone structure, like almost like a zombie. And I just knew I wanted someone very thin. It would make that makeup work a lot better. And as soon as David walked in the room, I would have cast him based on his physicality. As soon as I saw him walk in, he was tall, super thin, especially back then. And he had this big grin. And I said, oh my gosh, he would look great. And then I just gave him very little direction. I said, can you act as if you're decapitating somebody, but you're doing it very gleefully? You're having a great time. And he just flipped the switch immediately and he transformed into this sort of Jim Carrey-esque Grinch, kind of character that was hunched over and just very animated and theatrical and doing all this wonderful improv, cutting off the head and pouring salt on the wound. And I was just it's one of those moments where it's sort of magical. And I was just forgot I was watching an audition, and I'm with my partner Phil Falcone, and we're elbowing each other and laughing and just loving what we're seeing. And when he left, I turned to Phil and I said, "Well, what else are we really looking for?" I said, "This guy is more than we imagined we could have." I said, "Let's basically just end this and have him come back to the apartment. I'll put the mask on him now, and we'll put him in the costume and film him doing that all over again." And that's what we did. And I've been fortunate enough to experience that a few times on this movie. Same thing with Lauren Lavera, who plays Sienna. There was never a runner-up. I saw her real. I loved her. I loved her acting. I loved her physicality, the fact that she was a martial artist, and I knew what I was going to have to put this character through. And then when she did chemistry reads with Elliot Fulham and some other actors, it was just nobody else could play that part. And she just brought her character to another level in Terrifier 3. I mean, I put her in a really dark place. I mean, this is like the darkest chapter in Sienna's her story. So I'm surrounded by very talented people, so I'm very, very grateful. I mean, it was so incredible. Of course, I grew up idolizing those guys. They were all in movies. Tom Savini's my biggest influence. The reason why I'm speaking to you right now, honestly, is because that's when I discovered what a makeup artist was, and that set me forth on this trajectory, which made me fall in love with filmmaking. So to have him in the movie was this ultimate full circle moment. Unfortunately, I didn't get to work with Tom on the sets. He had to shoot that separately in Pittsburgh, so we just had a little conversation. It's a small scene, but he was fantastic. But Jason Patrick, like, I still can't believe he's in this movie. He's one of the best actors of his generation, and he's also in my favorite movie, which is The Lost Boys. I actually have a magnet on the side of my fridge there. And I found out through a mutual acquaintance that he was a fan of Terrifier before we ever met or anything. Him and his son love Art the Clown. And then able to meet him, and we talked movies, and we became good friends. And he just happened to say, if you ever have a role for me or something, he's like, I'd definitely be in one of these movies. And I went home. I was like, I got the perfect part for this guy. So it was just, and working with him, I was so nervous because, I don't know how he works. And then I haven't really worked with an actor of that caliber who's been in these amazing movies and delivered these amazing performances. And it was just so amazing to collaborate with an artist like that who's so talented and cares so much. I mean, he brought so much to his scenes, so many details, these beautiful details that really fleshed out his character and little Sienna. So it was wonderful. Not far. I mean, I have once I wrote part two, I knew where I was going to end the franchise, which is huge because the worst thing you can do is not have an end game in sight, and you're just sort of meandering, or you start killing off characters. Yeah, art and space, all that, jump in the shark, like all the things. I'm trying my best to learn from mistakes of the franchises that I adore. And even if they make those mistakes, we all still watch the movies. We all still love the part tens and whatever. But ultimately, I don't want to make timelines. You have like three different timelines of this character, or follow somebody for 8 movies and then kill them off, and you just question, why did I invest so much energy in empathizing with this character when they ultimately serve no purpose? So I just desperately trying to avoid those traps. So I want to have just a nice story, concise story with a beginning, middle, and end, a saga that you know what it is and you're satisfied with it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm revealing puzzle pieces as I go, because I know where it ends, and it's just a matter of, you know, how many of these films is going to take to fit these cool ideas that I have, because I also have lists of kill scenes. I have lists of scenarios that I want to put Art the Clown in. So it's like those boxes that I know we have to check, and then it's the actual story that I'm trying to tell. So it's always a tricky balance of putting all those cool set pieces in your movie while telling the same story, and then you run the risk of these long run times that everybody has a really hard time sort of accepting these days in a slasher film. This movie, even Terrifier 3, I think my original cut was 2 hours and 20 something minutes, and everybody's just desperately asking me to keep it under 2 hours. So I laugh when people say it's filler. Filler is like when you purposely try and pad out the runtime because you don't have enough time to get to a feature length movie. I have too much stuff going on. So I had to cut out like 5 or 6 scenes from Terrifier 3 to have a more excessive, palatable runtime. So it's tricky, but I know at least I know where it's going to end, and I have a lot of ideas. There's a lot of also scenes that I just wrote for part 3 that I didn't even bother shooting because I just knew it was going to pad out that runtime. So now I can put those into the subsequent film or films. But we'll see. I'm just happy to know that I have the end in sight. Oh, that's a great question. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So just so you know, but I'm gonna say Art the Clown is done with having any sort of side kicks or anything at this point. This was sort of like Terrifier 2 and 3 was sort of Art's supernatural detour to explore what brings the boogeyman back. But now it's important that I kind of get him back on track to where he was in the original Terrifier. Which is I think it's good. I think that's a fresh that's a healthy approach.
Why would he come back here? Even if he was alive, which he isn't. Wouldn't you want to get as far away from here as possible, as far away from you?
We both know this isn't over. I have to go back to the Terrifier.
It's still buried there, isn't it?
It might be the only thing that can stop them. Looking forward to the best Christmas ever, filled with fun, smiles, and laughter.